Hey guys, welcome back to the Anonymous Throwdown podcast. I'm here, as always, joined with Slickmuff and Salvage, and today we're going to be talking about some interesting news that is still alleged. It hasn't been confirmed, but there are some pretty major reports and major publications circling the rumor that Rocksteady is back to making a new Batman Arkham game. So we wanted to discuss what that could mean, why that choice has potentially been made, if we think there's any water to that rumor, if it holds any water, rather, and what we could expect to see from that. You know, Rocksteady has changed a lot over the last 10 years since they were making Arkham games. Is this still the team that can pull it off? And we just have all that good stuff to discuss. So, first, I just want to ask you guys, like, what did you think when you saw this? What was your immediate gut reaction?
Fuck yeah. That's what it was. I was ready for a new Arkham game.
Back.
We are so back. Exactly. And then once I looked at the guy that reported it, I mean, I'm not saying he's illegit, like not actually like a legitimate source, but I haven't really seen him like report on a lot of rumors. And he even said himself, he just heard this. Like, it's not even something that is like definitive. Like, yeah, they're working on an Arkham game. He just heard it himself. So who knows where he even heard this from? If he even like actually saw something of this game, or if he saw like early stages of concept art or something. But that's all we know, is that some guy heard it on Twitter, and it basically, that's essentially it, and that Sony might be going for an exclusive deal, which would be very interesting. Now that's where I'm like kind of like, this is because the Sony deal was kind of weird in many regards, because if Sony's going for Spider-Man and Batman, they got control of a lot of the superhero market, which is crazy. But I just don't know if that's actually something that WB is going to do, or if that's even something that is going to happen. That Sony thing kind of makes me a little bit iffy about this, but I'm excited if Rocksteady does it. I'm not really excited about the team that does it, but I'm still excited if a new Batman game's coming out by Rocksteady.
Well, let me say, Salvage, I think that you're diminishing a little bit. You're like, yeah, it's just some guy on Twitter. I mean, okay. Yes and no. It's a editor-in-chief of a major publication, and what I would honestly say, in my experience of doing YouTube for 10 years, is that there's two different types of leaks. There are leaks from journalists, from game journalists, and then there's everything else. Everything else is pretty much useless. People on Twitter, people on Reddit, people on 4chan, pretty much completely useless. But there are people like Jason Schreier and this guy who made this leak, and when they hear something,
he runs
industry,
Xbox Era is what he does,
right? And so when people like this guy or Jason Schreier say, "Oh, I heard this," in my experience, and you might disagree with me, but like, it's typically accurate. That, like, these guys typically are not wrong. The real journalists. Now, most leaks are bullshit, because most leaks are like, oh, some idiot on 4chan said XYZ. And even I'm guilty of doing this in the past, of reporting bullshit, forum posts, because I would get my hopes up and think, oh yeah, like, I'm excited for an Arkham game. I'm just gonna believe whatever I see, and be hopeful. This to me feels very different, just for me personally, because it is from a legitimate games journalist who has legitimate industry connections. Do I believe this? Personally, I absolutely believe this. A couple of reasons. One, Rocksteady has no money. They lost $200 million in one of the biggest flops in gaming history. They need money to not go bankrupt. And, a way that they can make money is make a Batman Arkham game. So I think that this is absolutely the direction that WB is going in. I think David Zaslav, all he cares about is money, better or worse. And one way in which, he can generate some revenue is through Arkham.
100%. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I do think that this is legitimate, and I honestly, like, even without hearing this, I can see Rocksteady just making an Arkham game anyway, because like, what else do they really have? They don't have their co-founders who basically made the studio, and basically made it into what it is now, and they can basically do whatever they really want. But if there's still that little part of the team that's still kind of there, that wants to make the Arkham games, and they know the formula and they already have the coding and all this stuff, I think the easiest and simplest thing to do would be to make an Arkham game. And people like this coming out and even saying it is quite actually interesting. I am kind of like happy that it's actually going on and doing this. So we'll see what happens, honestly. But I really hope that it is Rocksteady making this Arkham game. If it wasn't, then I don't know. It would be kind of like weird, but it is interesting. I want to see what they're doing.
Yeah, my first impression when I saw this was there's no way, because I'm with you guys. I've seen so many fake posts on Reddit. I remember before Gotham Knights got announced, there were rumors like every single day about, hey, there's a new Batman Arkham game coming out in 2019, and it's going to have the Court of Owls, and it's going to be an Arkham Origins sequel, and Prometheus is going to be the main villain. Like every single week, there was some new 4chan or Reddit post saying that there was going to be, some game that was just completely bogus. And initially, that's what I thought this would be as well. But yeah, as I started looking, I agree with Kobe. The guy who's saying it has some credibility. And at the same point, I mean, even if he was just making this up, I feel like this is one of those things that might be right anyway. Because as Kobe correctly stated, Rocksteady just was behind a complete bomb of a game that lost $200 million. And the tried and true formula is Arkham. So even if someone was just making this up, there's a good chance they're right. Now, I don't think that this is something that's just being made up, but yeah, I do think that it's very likely that this is the trajectory that they're headed in. When Jason Schreier reported on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, he mentioned that part of their plan was to go back to their roots and to produce a single player game. And I think even then, the assumption and the inference that everyone was making was, okay, so they're going to do Arkham again. And this to me is just further evidence of that. And I'll be honest, like I don't have like tons of insider contacts or anything, but every now and then, like, and I think we all do, it's just the nature of, all of us being YouTubers, you do hear little whispers. You have people who have a little bit of like, nuggets of information that they'll give you in DMs and stuff. And I have heard for quite a while as well that like, yeah, Arkham has been, a property that Warner Brothers still values and is still trying to figure out how to move forward with. And so when Arkham Shadow got announced, I wasn't overly surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Rocksteady's heading back toward as well.
I also think that Arkham Shadow is a good, it's a good precursor to what we're about to get, which would be a Rocksteady game. And I don't know how long it could take them, but if we're going based off of like the average Arkham lifespan of a game being developed, it's usually like 2 to 3 years. 4 max, I guess, would be like Arkham Knight would be like close to that. But like realistically, like they could really pump out a game really soon for this generation, and probably even use this generation to the maximum capacity that they could, and really push the limits of whatever they did with Suicide Squad. Because despite Suicide Squad not being the best game story wise or gameplay wise or dialogue wise, or even like, just appearance wise, overall, that game was a pile of shit. The facial animations looked really, really cool. And I would love to see that translated in an Arkham game where they're just like going balls to the wall with all of the cutscenes. And even still, like, I know that Rocksteady can probably still make a really good environment because they did that with Metropolis. So bringing it in, maybe they'll like reboot this whole thing. And that would be really interesting too, if they start from the roots, go back to Arkham Asylum and kind of make a whole new rebooted Arkham franchise, which would be a really smart decision for Rocksteady. Because no matter what happens, if there's Rocksteady and Arkham and that's going out into the public, people are going to eat it up. It doesn't matter if it's going to be good or bad. If they market it right, it's going to sell like fucking hotcakes. And I think that this is probably going to be the way to go. And despite all the rumors and whatnot, it's probably what they're going to do anyway. Even if, people are hearing it or not, or if they're reporting on it or not, it's something that they're probably going to do no matter what.
Well, you make a really good point in discussing the like facial animations and the environment design, because what I think a lot of people forget, because the major reaction that I've seen from this news is kind of, it branches into 3 categories. There's people who are just excited and think, yeah, that sounds awesome. There's people who are very skeptical of Rocksteady in its current state to pull it off, which I understand. I don't necessarily agree with, and I'll explain in just a sec. And the third group that I've seen are people who just don't want another Batman game, which I think was an argument that worked in 2015 after we'd had 4 in a row. But now here we are 10 years down the road with no new Batman game. I'm like, yes, I do want a Superman game, but also it's been a decade since we've had a Batman game. So I don't feel like there's like some crazy oversaturation of Batman games right now.
Great point.
But the people who don't trust Rocksteady right now, I'd encourage to just say, look at the technical quality of Suicide Squad. Like, the graphics are great. The cutscenes look really good. The lighting's really good. The gameplay functions pretty smoothly. Really, the biggest issues were the ones coming from the top. They were coming from Sefton Hill, Jamie Walker, the executives at Warner Brothers, who are no longer really there. Like, all those people have left and departed. So I do think we could see something with really high quality if they are, in fact, doing another Arkham game.
Right.
And, the other lesson to this for fans, by the way, guys, I hope my mic quality is okay. I'm out of town right now and filming on my phone. So apologies in advance if there's any issues with my mic. But I think the other thing
You
is
sound
that
beautiful,
it is so
Kobe.
Okay, I love it. It's so cyclical because, like you were saying, Jake, I mean, in 2015, everybody was saying, oh, no more Batman, no more Batman. But now we've seen the reality of, okay, what the alternative is. The alternative is Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. So now we're all like, yeah, more Arkham, please. Just print them out every 18 months. Give us a new one. Give me a VR Arkham game, too. I'll take that. I mean, anything is better than what we've been getting. And so, not to toot my own horn, but I was kind of saying this all along that we have to be careful what we wish for. And so it's one thing to say, oh, it's time to do something else. We're sick of the same old formula, this and that. Okay, yeah, but we also have something that like consistently on the low end makes an 8 out of 10 game. I mean, there's not one Arkham game that you could give below an 8 out of 10. And there's been 4 of them. And so like, this is kind of the point I've been making all along is that one, I do think there's more to explore in the universe, especially with apparently in the Suicide Squad DLC, the Flash is back, LOL. So, he might restore the universe or maybe go back to the beginning and reset with Arkham Asylum and do something similar to what Call of Duty is doing, which is essentially kind of making Modern Warfare 1, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3. Okay, yeah, it's a little bit annoying. And on one hand, it's cringy, right? It's like they're just re-releasing the same games with the same maps and the same names. But guess what? It sells like crazy and fans like them, and so this is my point with Arkham is what would we rather have? Would we rather have them spend 10 years to make a horrible, genuinely horrible game? Or do we want them to spend a third of that time making a really solid 8 out of 10 Arkham installment that really can introduce some new mechanics, some new things? I mean, there's so many things that we haven't done in the Arkham games yet. We haven't had the Batwing. We haven't had a true Gotham City. Arkham Knight it's a great map, but it's not like a true Gotham. It feels like a piece of Gotham, but not the whole thing, right? And so we could get that in this game as well. We've never gotten a true Bat Family Arkham game, where really like the Bat Family is really, really involved. Arkham Knight, yes and no, a little bit, but not truly there. There is still so much to explore, and I think Arkham Shadow is highlighting that, by the way. And I'm very excited to play it next month whenever they announce release date. I don't know. They're just going to tell you like, hey, it comes out tomorrow. Yeah. And it's like, oh, thanks for that stuff. But no, I mean, my 2 main takeaways from this are, one, I think it's absolutely real. I think that this is, you can kind of see it in the fact that they greenlit a Arkham VR game, that they're kind of going in this direction. I think that it is a no-brainer. If you were in charge of the money at Warner Brothers, you would make the same decision 10 out of 10 times. You certainly would not be doing a Gotham Knights 2 or a Suicide Squad game 2. I mean, what else would you make, right? And by the way, whether you like it or not, this is the direction of the gaming industry, as I highlighted. I mean, you look at Call of Duty, you look at these franchises that are just printing money. This is what they're doing. They're focusing on the franchises that are popular, that are beloved, and they are feeding the fan bases of that. And the Arkham franchise is one of the most beloved gaming franchises out there. And I have no doubt that it's going to be a huge financial success. Now, whether Rocksteady, sorry, I know I've been talking a lot. One last thing. As for whether or not Rocksteady can pull it off, I think they can. I think they can, because 80% of the groundwork has already been laid. You have the gameplay, you have the story structure, you have the side quest structure. I mean, it's really already there. I mean, what you need is a good writer. And certainly that's where things fell apart for the Suicide Squad game. But I think that they recognize that and they can address for that going forward. But as Jake alluded to, the gameplay is beautiful, the lighting, the map design. I mean, everything is really consistent with Rocksteady. It's just the writing. And all you need is to secure a good writer, and I think we're going to have an 8 or 9 out of 10 game.
100%. Yeah, no, there's literally little things. I even said too, and it makes a good point of what Jake and what you're saying too. But what Jake said was, there's people all over the fence of what this is, and there's people that are scared that the Suicide Squad team's going to take over and make an Arkham game, and all this stuff. And I basically tweeted that too. But I also said that the formula for Arkham is like the easiest in gaming. Like, you literally have it right there. There's 4 successful games. You just gotta basically replicate Arkham Knight, maybe improve upon the gameplay a little bit, make little changes. If they reboot it, maybe they could kind of like change a few other things within the actual universe. But overall, the formula is there, and all they need is Paul Dini. That's it. That's all they need. They just need Paul Dini to come back and make actual good story like he did for Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. And I think that they have a banger of a game. But until then, I mean, I do think they have a lot to prove. Like, these are the people that made Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. So it's really going to be up in the air for a lot of people when it comes to actually, like, I don't want to say caring about them, but at least like understanding that they're still coming off of a very, very shit game and they're still under WB. So things can still go wrong, but I think that if they follow the formula of what they did in years prior, they could easily make, one of the best Arkham games ever if they actually follow that formula.
I completely agree with you, but can I also say I think fans are bluffing? I don't think that, and what I mean by that is right now the fans are saying, we don't care if they make another Arkham game. I've seen these comments on my first video of like, I don't care, it's Rocksteady, they suck, they did Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I just think that once that cinematic trailer drops, right, and it's like that, and then like 6 months out that gameplay trailer drops, and we see the expanded Gotham, we see the Batwing. I mean, everyone's gonna lose their mind. Let's just be honest. Like, let's just call it what it is. Everybody's bluffing, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm not gonna buy it. I don't care. I'm boycotting Rocksteady." Yeah, right. Give me a freaking break. That is such a lie. We all know it. Everybody is going to buy the game if they do it, and that's why the more you think about it, the more it becomes a no-brainer that of course they're going to do it. Because if they do say a Flash game, a Superman game, yeah, I don't buy it. Of course I will buy it, but I'm saying I don't trust it. I don't think it's going to work because we've seen them try to innovate their IP and it hasn't worked, right? And but Batman Arkham, I mean, it's just they're not going to do it wrong. I really, really don't think so. As long as they get a solid game director and a solid writer.
Well, here's another thing too, is that people that want more like diversity, well, we're already getting that with Wonder Woman. So if Wonder Woman does really good, if you want more games like that, go buy that game and let's make that a success. And then I think WB might get the idea that, oh, they want more games like Wonder Woman. So let's go ahead and make a Superman. Let's go ahead and make a Flash, Green Lantern from different studios like Monolith. So I think that, Wonder Woman is always there for the people that don't give a shit about Arkham. But realistically, the numbers don't lie. Everybody cares about Arkham. Even now, people want Arkham. There's a huge community on PC that want Arkham. And that's another thing that I'm kind of like concerned about with the PS5 or the the PlayStation like exclusivity thing, is that if they take it away from PC and Xbox, that's like a huge, like, especially PC, that's a big community that they're ripping from. But overall, I still think that, again, they got Wonder Woman. If they don't want Arkham, if they want Arkham, this is a good alternative. And I really, really hope that, they actually do this, because it would be a really good idea to have a Wonder Woman game, a Batman game, and then it kind of like expands upon that and kind of keeps doing that type of cycle where you do one of those games and another Batman and then another superhero game.
Well, like you've both mentioned, Arkham works. Like, I'm not opposed to them doing a Superman game, and if they did, I'd buy it, and I could see them doing a great job with it. But that's such a hard sell, especially after Suicide Squad. Whereas if you go back, I mean, there's almost nothing Arkham related that people wouldn't buy. If they wanted to do a Batman Beyond game set in the Arkhamverse, they could. If they wanted to do an Arkham Origins sequel with an expansion on dual play mechanics, they could. If they wanted to do a remake of Arkham Asylum where they say, hey, we've revamped the environment to be just the most gorgeous looking game. It's like photorealistic. So you're like, getting to do the Killer Croc encounter, except it looks photorealistic, and people would buy it. Like, there's very little that they couldn't do well that people wouldn't be excited to try. versus, yeah, if they make a Flash game, it's like, okay, how do those mechanics work? And there's not that built-in IP. And I know that there's fans who think it would be a sure thing, but look at the Flash movie. That was also like a huge bomb that lost the studio a ton of money. So I think it's really smart to do another Batman Arkham game. And yeah, as far as the exclusivity goes, I agree with you, Marcel. I think that would be a very weird choice to make it a PlayStation exclusive. All that really tells me, though, is that other studios value the Arkham brand more than Warner Brothers does. Like, as soon as there's whispers of it being produced, all of a sudden you have all these companies, because I'd imagine that there's more than just Sony that would be interested in that. I'm sure if Xbox caught wind of this, they'd be doing the same thing, because Arkham is a brand that sells. It's a recognizable name in the industry that gamers like playing. And so, yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer, especially for Sony, who are so well known for their Spider-Man IP. Like, if they had both Batman and Spider-Man under their exclusivity label, all of a sudden they're like, releasing every year a new superhero game. One year it's Spider-Man, one year it's Wolverine, one year it's Batman. Like, that would be really smart of them. I'm with you. I think for the greater capacity of players to actually get their hands on the game, I'd prefer it to not be an exclusive. I think exclusivity sometimes gets a little bit too scummy and becomes a little bit too much of a monopoly. But at the same point, I think it shows that the publishers out there like Sony are recognizing, yeah, if Arkham makes a comeback, that's going to be huge. That's going to be a huge game that everyone is going to want to play.
I think the calculation from WB is purely monetary. They're in such a financial hole in every area. It's not just the gaming division, it's movies, it's everything. And so I really think they're going to look at it and calculate, would we make more money with the Sony check? And Sony will basically write them a check to not release the game on Xbox. That's basically how exclusivity works, right? If they say that check from Sony for X $100 million or whatever, plus the sales on PlayStation are more than what we will make selling on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, I think they'll take the deal. If they think they're going to make more money selling it on Xbox, which I probably think is the case, although I think PC players have PTSD from Arkham Knight. I don't think they're going to be buying it on PC. I think the sales will be poor. Xbox, though, you have a lot of sales there. So I don't know.
I don't know about that, Kobe. I'll disagree, because the modding community right now has been absolutely stellar. Like the
That's a good point.
Change from where it was. I agree with the beginning, like the beginning 2016 when it first came out. That shit was a disaster. That was one of the worst. I think it probably was the worst PC launch in history, besides maybe Cyberpunk. I think Cyberpunk was better on PC than it was on consoles. What am I talking about? So yeah, Arkham Knight was a shitter. But overall, I think that if they, at least try to make it a little bit better on PC, that community could definitely still hold a lot of weight. And I don't know. I feel like the PC community right now has definitely grown a lot more than it has from back then. But I do agree that the PC port probably will be shit on launch, just like a lot of games. It's kind of sad. But I really hope that they do make an Arkham game next. It's going to be phenomenal if they do. Either way, I'm going to buy it. I mean, I think everybody's going to buy it. Like, it's a no-brainer. WB's smart for fucking with me, because they know exactly what we want, bro.
Well, and the problem for WB is that you have to follow what consumer research and buying patterns say, not what customers say. And this is where it gets tricky, because I think if you listen to the customers, they listen to the customers. They listen to the tweets and the Reddit forums that we don't want Arkham anymore. We want something new. We want something different. We want a new universe. Right. We want to try different games. And then Suicide Squad came out, and then everybody was like, just kidding, we don't. And then Gotham Knights came out. That was in the wrong order. And we're like, just kidding, we don't. And even Wonder Woman. I mean, I don't think Wonder Woman is going to sell as well as an Arkham game. Now, if you look on Twitter, then people are going to say, oh, thank God they're finally diversifying and doing Wonder Woman. I'm so sick of Arkham. But, when you look at the sales, I just don't think it's going to support what you're reading on Twitter personally. And so I think that WB was a little bit led astray by what people are saying, as opposed to the reality of like the consumer and what they actually want.
I don't want to argue about that, but I kind of want Jake's opinion on that. What do you think about Wonder Woman sales, Jake? Do you think that they'll do good?
Marcelo,
or
are
do
you in a
they'll-
wind tunnel?
No, but I can fix that real quick. I can
Okay,
fix it.
okay.
Give me a
Okay,
second
go
here.
and mute. Let Jake.
But I'm just wondering, Jake, I want to know, do you think that Wonder Woman's going to sell good, or do you think, like what Kobe's saying, that it won't sell? Well, I think that it's probably going to sell good, but I don't know if it's going to be as good as, like, Wars. I kind of agree with Kobe there.
So I think that it's going to be a lot like the Hogwarts Legacy sales, not in the sense that it's going to sell 1 billion units and, whatever. But that I think it will be heavily dependent on if it's what the fans want and if it's something that has good word of mouth. Because Hogwarts, I don't know of anyone that expected it to sell as much as it did, for as much as it did. I think it was kind of a surprise hit, and it came down to the fact that it initially started with fans who were excited for the game. They played it, talked about it to their friends, and then you had more people buy it. And it snowballed into this really great payday for Warner Brothers. And if Wonder Woman's in a similar situation where, those of us who are diehard DC fans get it and say, hey, they've improved the free flow. Like, it's better than Arkham Knight free flow. And the traversal where you're flying around Themyscira is super fun. And the Nemesis system is so fun that I'm engaged for, dozens of hours, even after I've completed the story, which is also like 15 hours long and really well told. Like, if that's the game we get, then I think that the sales could be just shy of Spider-Man's sale figures. Like, I think Spider-Man is just so popular and mainstream more than Wonder Woman is. But if the game comes out and it's like a 7 or 8 out of 10, like, it's solid, but it's not necessarily Arkham Knight level of quality, it's not in the running of best superhero game ever, then I feel like it will sell reasonably enough, but yeah, probably not quite where they'd want it to. But it's that interesting situation where I do think it will likely sell better than Suicide Squad and Gotham Knights. Like, I don't think it's going to be one of those games that has really disappointing sales numbers. Yeah, that's kind of where I would guess that it will be.
I agree with that. I think that they kind of honestly shot themselves in the foot a little bit, because in many ways they've released the announcement in 2021, and I think the rumor was that this game's coming out in 2026, so it's still 2 years away, and they have literally no marketing. All the marketing and all the stuff that we've seen from this game since the announcement has been one concept art on somebody's LinkedIn page, and then also some leaked descriptions of the game saying that we'll be flying around. That's the only thing that we really got, is that we got the free flow combat confirmation, and we don't even know if that was real. I don't even know if that was 100% real, but I'm assuming that it was, because I think it was actually getting taken down for copyright and stuff like that. So overall, this game needs to really start marketing. So yeah, that one was definitely wrong.
Yeah, well,
but yeah,
and I'm with you in the sense that I think that will be a huge deciding factor in whether Warner Brothers wants to greenlight a Superman game or a Green Lantern game. And I think they should, and especially with them considering other third-party developers, I absolutely think they should be talking to Square Enix about, hey, can we make a Green Arrow game with you guys? And they should be going to, 2K and saying, do any of your devs want to work on a Green Lantern game or something like that? But ultimately, as far as Batman goes, that's actually something that I'd like to discuss too. Do you think that they are going to make, I don't know that they'll reboot it. I think if they make a Batman game, it will be an Arkham game. I don't think it's going to be a complete reboot where it starts with his origins and goes through it. It might be a retelling of stories they've already told, but I think Arkham will absolutely be in the title just because that's what sells. Gotham Knights is an example of a Batman-esque game that didn't sell great, partially because I don't think Batman was the main playable character of the game, but also because it was a reboot. It was an IP that people had less stake in. But I'm curious, do you guys think that there's going to be some cosmetic changes to the world or the design or how they do it? Because we're currently seeing a continuity of Batman on screen that is trying to be hyper realistic. So I'm almost curious, will we get a Batman Arkham game where instead of fighting Titan thugs and Solomon Grundy, we're going up against the ventriloquist and Victor Zsasz and maybe, some of those less obscure or I guess more grounded characters who feel like they could exist in the real world? Like, will this be a game that leans way more into the detective elements? And I'm not necessarily saying that's a good or bad thing. I'm just curious, do you think that's going to be part of the direction forward? Because that market research is important, and Matt Reeves' The Batman universe is currently pretty popular with the public and DC fans. I don't know. Do you guys think that's something that will be taken into consideration to kind of make those games adjacent to that universe?
Go, you could go.
I would say that it's certainly possible. And you actually saw a little bit of this again, going back to a reboot. The closest thing you could sort of compare it to would be the Call of Duty reboot, where they very closely followed the original games. And they did do that. They made sort of more shocking, more realistic. They made missions where it was just very gruesome, or you could there were more stakes with like killing civilians on accident and things like this. And I mean, the original Modern Warfare 2 was famously very, very intense in terms of some of the no Russian mission and things like this. But I do think this is a trend for games, not just in the Batman universe. It certainly would make all of the Batman stan accounts happy on Twitter, because every time I say, hey, I'd like to see a couple of things from the comic books in the movies, everybody freaks out. And like absolutely loses their mind and attacks me. So I think that that crowd would be very, very happy with that. But I would honestly say, if it's not broken, you don't need to make any big changes to it. And so I don't think they should go in that direction. I would really think that they keep things tonally very similar to the original games, and just explore areas that they didn't explore. Like the main thing that is really missing, that becomes so apparent to me when I play Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, and the one thing I'll concede that they do better than Arkham and pretty much nothing else besides this one thing, is that the scenes where you get the characters not in the suit, the scenes, when Spider-Man Miles Morales opens up and it's at like the dinner party scene and they're all just hanging out in his apartment and they're building rapport with all the characters. You don't get a lot of scenes like that in Arkham. Very, very few. And I think that's something they can really build upon and get more of Bruce and Wayne Manor, or Bruce going to parties, like traditional sort of Batman movie scenes. I think that's something they can really add.
There's only one in Arkham that's like actually like he's at a party, and it's in the Cold Heart DLC where he's like, I think he's like hosting a humanitarian award.
Oh, right.
Thing, and then Mr. Freeze attacks. But that's literally the only time he's actually like acting like Bruce Wayne out in public, besides maybe the beginning of Arkham City.
Right.
Yeah, like he's actually Bruce Wayne in like an actual scene. So I think that what they need to do is keep that same tone, but make, of course, the story last longer, like they did with Gotham Knights. Make it throughout weeks, have you do different side missions throughout the different weeks and stuff like that. The detective part would be really interesting there, because you could do the Arkham formula, but then you could also have that detective element that Gotham Knights had, where you're going out interrogating thugs, trying to find clues for different like missions and stuff like that, for different side missions. And that would actually kind of like help the immersion of the game and the universe itself. So I do think, I totally agree there. They need to do more of what Spider-Man does and take him out of the suit for at least like a good 5-10 minutes, just like have him walk around and meet up with people around the world. And oh man, I can even just like imagine a scene where Bruce Wayne has to like infiltrate a court of owls, kind of like what they did with, of course, Gotham Knights, but you're actually Bruce Wayne walking around meeting the court of owls people. So stuff like that, where you're actually walking around as Bruce Wayne, that would absolutely be amazing. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, there might be something like that in Arkham Shadows, where you're kind of Bruce Wayne for a little bit. I don't know. I thought I saw some gameplay stuff with you walking around as Bruce Wayne, but I could be wrong there. But overall, that would be nice to see in the future Arkham games. Them expanding Bruce Wayne's character a little bit, because he had none. He had like zero. He had arcs and he had character, but it was very limited because it was only one night. It was 4 nights that we saw him. So, and also to answer your question, Jake, I know that you were talking about the reboot and what you would like to see. I would absolutely love to see exactly that, like a reboot, Modern Warfare style type of thing, because that's what they need. They just need, because since Kevin Conroy is gone, like it's going to be really hard to pursue this franchise without either going backwards, because you can't really go more in the future unless you really want to make some weird uncanny thing with Roger Craig Smith, which I don't think even Roger Craig Smith wants to do. So I think that the best thing would be to maybe just cast Roger Craig Smith and just start fresh with him. Obviously, he seems like he's the one that's kind of like continuing the legacy of Arkham with Arkham Shadow. And I really hope that in many ways they do get him back, because he is, I would say, top 3 definitive Batman voices of all time. Like, he's really, really solid. So him, bring him back, kind of revamp the free flow combat a little bit, make it feel a little bit more impactful. Maybe, I don't even want to say go back to like Arkham City type of combat, but make it feel a little bit more smooth and whatnot than Arkham Knight, where you're flying around like the Flash. But yeah, there's a lot of things that they could do for a reboot, and going in the route like Modern Warfare would be perfect.
No, I think they should make him twice as fast in the next game, and then the one after that twice more fast. And then by the end of it, he literally is the Flash. And then they've made the Flash game. They have the mechanics because they made him
becomes
so
the Red
freaking
Death, bro.
fast. Yeah, exactly. He's like Flashpoint Batman, you know.
Yeah, the other option with voice acting is that they could remake the 3 with Kevin Conroy and use the original voice files, kind of like they did with The Last of Us Part 1 when they remade that game. And then they could even bring in like some of the cut dialogue that they didn't end up using, and kind of implement more missions even using that. And then
Jake, would you like to see them bring him back in AI?
No, not at all. No, I'd only be down like literally if that was like just reusing actual lines he recorded. And then all you have to do is you cast Roger Craig Smith to play him in the prequels, and then you cast like Bruce Greenwood to play him in sequels after that. I think that's the way you could go. But talking about expansion and like, I don't know, sort of making the story feel bigger and more lived in, that's a little bit of something that I could see Warner Brothers executives getting really excited about, because they could say, wow, you're making a game twice as big as Arkham Knight. Let's take half of it and sell it as DLC for a live service. I'm curious, like, kind of on that note, what are some concerns or issues that you could see arising, or poor decisions that executives could make that would make this go from something really exciting that could be a return to form to another dud that fans get really pissed off about?
Exactly what you said there is the live service. Yeah.
I think it's a really good point. What I will say is that I do think that the story is not going to be behind a paywall. Okay, so I think that the classic Arkham story is still going to be okay. I think what we're going to see is, I think you're right. Their analysis of Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad is not that live service games can't make money, because they're looking at all the other live service games making money. Their analysis was the games just didn't work and fans didn't like them. So if they do have a game that sells well, they're going to be like, okay, how many microtransactions can we put in this game? But let's also let's be fair. Like, let's look at Hogwarts Legacy. Is that some ridiculously riddled microtransaction game where you can't even complete the story without paying? No, it's not. Like, it has microtransactions. It has the same BS that every other modern game has, but it's not over the top, right? It's not like it ruins the game. Okay. And so I think we'll see the same thing here. I think what we will see is expanded DLC. I mean, you thought that $40 for the Batgirl DLC and a couple other packs were bad. I think it's going to be on steroids. And there will be probably even side missions behind a paywall, if I had to guess. But I think the most important thing is, I think that they will do an equally as good job as they did with Hogwarts Legacy at navigating the BS of these microtransactions that we all hate so much, but still making a good game. And I think Hogwarts Legacy is a WB example of that.
So as far as DLC goes, I've actually always felt like one thing that they could do is, if they had enough content to really justify, charging $40 to $60 for it, I feel like that's not a bad way you could take live service single player superhero games. Because imagine playing Arkham Knight in its entirety, like the full base game, all the side missions, everything. That's a pretty decently sized game. And then imagine, instead of 1 Seasons of Infamy DLC, they had like 3 or 4 of them. So they're adding like 12 side missions to the game over the course of the next 6 months or so. Maybe you have another studio working on a multiplayer component to the game that's like Arkham Origins Online. You have Rocksteady in-house making challenge maps so that there's 6 new ones every single month. I mean, that could justify a year or two of content if they really put some work into it and making quality content. But if they just lock half of the content for the base game behind a paywall, like, I mean, alternatively, imagine booting up Arkham Knight and you find a Professor Pig victim and you go to like investigate and all of a sudden a paywall pops up and it's like, oh, $2.99 to follow this mission thread. Like, that would really piss me off. So I think that they do need to be careful, because if they're not careful, it could come across as way more invasive than fans would be willing to go with. But I also agree that it seems like they did a U-turn pretty recently, where initially they were talking about, yeah, Hogwarts Legacy sold really well, so we want to make as many microtransactions as we possibly can to, in the sequel, so that people keep playing and keep purchasing. But now it seems like they're more willing to kind of keep the Hogwarts Legacy and Arkham formula intact, because, I mean, now they've done a few games where they've tried to chase the trend and it just hasn't worked.
It's like, have you seen that meme where it's the it's buying explosive gel and it's like pay $4.99, like insert your credit card to get explosive gel. And it was like if Arkham Asylum was released in 2024, anyway, go ahead, Marcel, sorry.
No, that's exactly what I would imagine. Is like they would lock the equipment, like certain items. They'll be like, oh, they'll make Batman all customizable, so you could like customize your utility belt, but instead of like doing regular skins, they're gonna like make you buy different parts for the skin, and then you have to buy different colors for those skins. That's what I would really want to see, honestly. Like, you do that for Robin and Nightwing. Give me that, WB. I want to spend as much money as possible on the least amount of actual valuable things humanly possible. That would be great. That's what I would imagine WB doing, honestly. I really do think that overall they probably won't do that for Arkham, just because it would really be the biggest spit in the face to like that franchise, because that's not what they're known for. Arkham's not known for that. Hell, even Spider-Man's not known for that. These single player superhero games are not meant to be monetized as heavily as these companies really want them to be. And I would even go as far to say that Arkham Knight was almost there, because they had those episodes where you would play as Harley Quinn, Red Hood, Nightwing, Robin. They could have easily, and I think they are sold separately if I'm not mistaken, but you can like easily sell those for so much more and like just like upcharge the shit out of everybody. And I don't think like in today's day and age, there would be people calling it scummy, but it could still be possible today where people would lock like a 10-minute freaking Nightwing side mission in a freaking, a $10 pack. So I personally think that overall WB could do that with the story. And I would like to see more story content within like the Arkham universe, where you have that season of Infinity. That's something that Gotham Knights needed. And I know it's so stupid because they were like, we're not a live service game. But realistically, Gotham Knights would have served more as a live service game. It would have been a lot better as a live service game than Suicide Squad was. And Suicide Squad would have been better as like a single player, or not a single player, as a story that's there. And then you finish it to the end, you save the Justice League, and then there's more Brainiacs you have to kill, and Justice League's just out there running around. So the roles should have been flip-flop. Gotham Knights should have had that, where they're having multiple villain packs a month or a year, or like every other month or whatever, and they're giving out as many villains as possible in the game that you go and fight. Instead, they give us 3 villains and they bounce. They give us Starro and then like one other like pack, and then they're done. And if Arkham is kind of like not headed in that direction, but if it's like trying to emulate something like that, I really do think that it would be better just to go with the Arkham Knight formula, where you're taking little story packs and you're just shoving them into like seasonal pass, and then there you go. Instead of like trying to trick fans and trick consumers into thinking they're going to get more content than what they're actually going to get. So yeah, I don't want to see no live service like version of Arkham Knight. That would just like be that would be so terrible. That would ruin the whole aura of Arkham.
Well, ultimately, yeah, I think you bring up a good point where, yeah, like ultimately fans just don't want their time to be wasted. So, for example, if tomorrow Insomniac at the State of Play, they probably won't, so no one get your hopes up, because I doubt they will. But let's say Insomniac announces Spider-Man 2 DLC. If that DLC consists of like We're going to do 3 2-hour-long story packs over the course of the next 6 months where you're going to play as Peter Parker when he was in high school. And then after that, we're going to do 3 2-hour-long Miles Morales follow-ups where you're going to fight Carnage or something. And we're also going to have like boss rush modes where you can fight Venom and Lizard at the same time. I would buy I'd pay 20, 40, maybe even $60 for that. Like that would be a huge value. Whereas if it's just like, hey, go through the hunter bases again, but this time you'll get a reward if you follow this challenge, like you're not spotted or something, then there's very little mileage you're going to get out of that. And the same thing, like if they want to monetize content in a new Batman game, if it's like, yeah, all the side missions are locked behind a $299 paywall, that's going to piss people off. Or if they're charging an arm and a leg for challenge maps, that's going to piss people off. But, if they're saying $10 for a Cold Heart style DLC or $5 to $10 for we're going to add 4 side missions to the game on top of the 12 that are already in game, I think people would be pretty forgiving of that. Like I've mentioned, though, I really think that this whole situation, whatever they're doing, whatever Rocksteady's making, again, I think it's Arkham, but even if it's a Superman game, if in 2 years they announce a Superman game, whatever it is, they just need to not waste fans' time, and they need to understand why people want to play the IP. Like, no one goes into a Batman or Superman game wanting the same experience that you'd get playing Fortnite or PUBG or something like that. Like, people want to experience stories with these characters and have really cool sequences and encounters, and that's what they really need to lean into, not how can we monetize the shit out of this.
So
that's
here's
true,
my question
it's
is yeah, well, good point. And so my question is, let's assume this report is true, going back full circle to the top of the video. Assuming this report is true, when will we get this game? Because it took them 9 years to make Suicide Squad kill the Justice League. I think it actually was 7.5 or 8. But it was around 7.5, somewhere in that range. Very, very long time. Now, when we look at Arkham games, those games took 2 to 4 years. They spent 4 years on Night at most. Maybe it's actually closer to 3.5 because they did some DLC for City in 2011. So let's assume that they're working on this game. You got to hope that they're giving up on the DLC content. It's like that meme where somebody with a stick is poking somebody dead, and it's like the caption is, "That's already dead. Stop. Just leave it alone." And that's this game. So I hope that they are quitting the DLC ASAP and diverting all resources to this game. When do you think we would see it? Because I think that's the unfortunate part about this is, even if these reports are true, this isn't like we're getting next year. We're looking at probably 2 years at the earliest.
I'm guessing like 2027, 2028. Just for the simple fact that they already have the Arkham, code. They are basically the ones that have all of that in their studio. So unless they deleted all that for Suicide Squad, which would be just bonkers, but I'm sure they use some of Arkham Knight's code also for Suicide Squad. I wouldn't be surprised. Overall, though, the time period between Arkham games, for the new studio, WB Montreal made it in like 2.5 years, made Arkham Origins, and that's some people's favorite Arkham games. So I really don't see them taking a long period of time, especially with this. For Suicide Squad, it makes sense because they were making a new game. The leaders are very incompetent, changing the story and changing the script every so often and trying to add new things like the freaking Batmobile or Bat-Tank. So I think that with Suicide Squad, that's a bit of that was a disaster. So if things go smoothly, I'm saying 3 to 4 years. If things go roughly, like really, really rough, and people are quitting and things are terrible with leadership and the executives are, demanding things that they don't want to do, I'm guessing like freaking 2029, 2030, which would be devastating because then I'm 30 years old. I'm playing a fucking Arkham game, bro. That's depressing just to think about right now. I'm not gonna lie. I can't wait that long for an Arkham game. What about you, Jake? When do you think it's coming out?
So I'm a little less optimistic than you, unfortunately, because we've seen a huge shift in the time that it takes to develop games. It took Insomniac 4 years to make the first Spider-Man game, and honestly, even though there was a team working on Miles Morales, it seems like the team working on Spider-Man 2 was mostly working on that game for 5 years to produce it. And even then, the game isn't complete. It's missing half the third act, and you can tell that Brian Intihar really feels like they weren't able to put in everything they wanted to. Another one is Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, a remake of a game that came out in 2002. I think they made it in a year back in 2002. It was announced in 2020, and they'd been working on it for 2 years. So they started it in 2018. It will release next year. So it's this, and obviously there were complications and other facets to that conversation and problem. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're talking about a linear game that takes 12 hours to beat. And even when they rebooted it and restarted development from scratch, we're still talking 3 years of work for a game that was originally developed in 1 year. So the only way that I think we'll see an Arkham game within the next couple of years, maybe 3 years, would be if they just say, we're doing an Arkham Asylum remake. We're just rebuilding it from the ground up, but we're not going to record any new voice lines or anything. That's the only way I see us getting one that soon. If they are going to make a game that's Arkham Knight sized or bigger, and if they're going to, because they do have the infrastructure from the previous games, but they'll have to port that all into Unreal Engine 5 and, have a ton of troubleshooting with that. My guess is we are probably looking at a 4 or 5 year long development cycle, especially because this is probably only the very beginning of them even talking about this. Jason Schreier mentioned that they were helping with a director's cut of Hogwarts Legacy. They did still have a skeleton crew working on the DLC. So I think optimistically we could get an Arkham Asylum remake in 2027. But yeah, if we're getting Batman Arkham Insurgency or whatever, where it's an origin sequel with dual play and a city that's twice as big as Night, unfortunately, I feel like we'll be waiting probably until 2029, 2030 before we get that, which I hope is not the case. I actually have kind of been thinking about this a lot lately, where I feel like the AAA standard of game development needs to shift, where we get a little bit more variety, because I'd be okay if this was, an 8-hour long campaign with a map even slightly smaller than Batman Arkham Knights. And it's a really solid game where they don't even do facial motion capture for it, but it looks really good and plays really well, and they price it at $50. I would be totally fine if they went that direction with it. But that's just not where AAA gaming is right now. Everything needs to have the biggest open world with the best graphics and motion capture. And yeah, so unfortunately, I think we are going to be waiting a long time before we get another Batman Arkham game, if that is what Rocksteady ends up doing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It is going to take a while no matter what, because we don't know if they're going to reboot. I don't know if they'll actually make a remake of Arkham Asylum. I feel like that might be something that they've kind of moved on from. I could see them kind of, I don't know, rebooting it from there and kind of making their own Arkham Asylum with a new cast and stuff like that. But either way, yeah, the development time for current AAA video games is usually about 4 or 5, if not 7 to 9 years. So it's kind of ridiculous. No matter what, we're probably going to hear about what they're going to be doing, I would assume relatively soon, within a couple years, knowing what WB is doing. If they don't change, announcing games half a decade before they come out, who knows? Maybe we'll get an announcement next year when they're all officially done with the process of actually doing everything beforehand. So who knows? Maybe we'll get an announcement next year. Maybe we'll get it in 2026. Either way, I'm excited for a new Arkham game. No matter what, I just hearing new Arkham game yesterday was something that woke me up. I was so pumped up. I couldn't believe it. Literally felt like I was back in 2017. And hopefully it actually follows through this time when we actually get a good Arkham game instead of Gotham Knights 2.0.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of the last thing I'll say about release, is that it would be in their best interest to announce this ASAP, because I mean, I do miss the days when we could get a game announcement 6 months before it went live because you'd get the hype train going so good. Like when Batman Arkham Knight got announced, and that one even got delayed, but I still think that was just a little over a year of marketing versus like the Spider-Man games where you get an announcement like 2 or 3 years before they come out. But at the same point, Rocksteady is in a tough situation where, yeah, I mean, people are not. Well, I guess the best way to put it is they're pretty divided. Like some fans are excited about the prospect, but many aren't. So yeah, I think it's in Warner Brothers' best interest to get a cinematic trailer out the door as soon as possible. I'd maybe time it alongside the Batman 2 or the Brave and the Bold movie or whatever next thing really gets people talking about the character. That would probably be the best time to announce. Oh, and by the way, Rocksteady is doing a new Batman Arkham game. It's a sequel to Arkham Knight, and we've got Bruce Greenwood playing Batman in it, and getting some of those details out the door. That would get a lot of people excited, and I think shift a lot of the public perception of the studio.
Any final thoughts, Kobe?
No, I would say my final thoughts are either get on the hype train or get off. If you want to keep playing Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, be my guest. But go ahead and get out of my mentions with all this crying and complaining about, oh my gosh, another Arkham game. Oh my god. I'm just kidding. I mean, it's okay. It's all right. I still like you guys, but let's wisen up here, okay? We're talking about 10 years to make a shit game, or half of that time to make a really good game. Those are our two options. And I want to go back to the old reliable. I want them. Here's what I want. I want W Montreal, Rocksteady, and a third studio to rotate like Call of Duty and make a new one every year. Let's do every November. Let's get a new Arkham game every November.
Let's do it.
And we can do rotating dev cycles. And then everybody be like, oh my God, it's just recycling the same game. Yeah, and that's the point. It's just more of the same.
It's fucking great.
It's more of what you want, you see? I'm being slightly facetious, but only slightly. I'm pretty serious about this. Stop messing around. They have to get back to the fundamentals and make a good game. You've got to make one game right. It's been 10 years since they've made a game that is decent. That's a long time. So we need to get 1 or 2 good games under our belt. And as much as I love Arkham Shadow, and I think I'm going to love it, that it doesn't really count. It's a VR game, very niche. They need one good game to return to form, something that's a really respectable entry, maybe a second game as well in the Arkham franchise, and then we can talk about doing other games. And as you mentioned, Marcel, I mean, we have Wonder Woman coming. Okay, so that audience is going to get fed, and I'm a part of that audience too. I want the other games in theory, but I think practically the next steps to save this gaming division, because what I'm worried about, and I was talking about this with the movies too, and we can end on this, is at a certain point, like if this James Gunn universe fails, they're going to just give up on making Green Lantern and Green Arrow and Superman movies. They're just going to be like, okay, we're just going to do Batman. And we obviously don't want that. But at the same point, like what's going to get them through that hump is by making another Batman trilogy and then doing a Brave and the Bold Batman and doing a Joker movie. And like, that's how you have to get out of that sort of dip, right? And so the same is true in the gaming division. You can't just keep taking these risks doing these off the walls game, because if 5 of them in a row lose money, an executive who doesn't have any loyalty to the characters like we do, they don't give a shit about the kid. They're just looking at the money, and they're going to say, hey, these DC games suck. Like, let's stop doing these. I mean, this is like, we're just losing hundreds of millions of dollars. And so what we need is just some momentum. We need something to work, something to be good, and get things going in the right direction. And then we can talk about expanding and doing some other characters. But until then, it's time to return to the Arkham formula. We've had this 10-year experiment of a lot of, in my opinion, lost time trying to experiment with other things that didn't work. And it's time to go back to old reliable.
Yeah, I can just imagine like the executives sitting around a table and saying exactly what you just said. Like, yeah, these superhero games, they're fucking garbage. Look at the sales. And all of them just like fucking parrot. Just like, yep, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, this thing sucks. Let's get rid of these things. And it's eventually probably going to happen if things keep going the way they are. I think that Marvel has a really good system in hand right now because they have lesser games like Marvel. What was that called? Was it Marvel? Not Marvel Rivals. Well, Marvel Rivals is coming out in December, and that's like an Overwatch game. So that's something that I'm very excited for, and I can't wait for that. Yeah, it's an incredible game. Blade they got coming out. They got another Spider-Man game, and Insomniac's whole lineup with like Wolverine and possibly Venom and possibly X-Men and all those things. Like they have so much in the lineup right now, it's bizarre. And DC literally only has Wonder Woman and Arkham Shadow. And that's it. Like what other DC games have we heard of besides those two right now? I can't really think of it because the last couple of ones been garbage. So
and
executives are going to look at that.
So
and hopefully they start looking at that.
Why is that the case? Why does Sony have all these, or Marvel have all these games coming out? It's because the last couple have made money. So it's easy to greenlight when you're making money. It's easy to expand when you're making money. When every game you release is a huge L, all of a sudden each one is like, okay, we're not going to do that. Like it becomes fewer and fewer, and that's what we're seeing. The reason we have so few games in development is because they've been losing so much money on this vertical, and so
Kobe,
yeah,
they got 2 Black Panther games coming out in the next like 5 years. Where the fuck is the Superman games, bro? They got it back to back in an Iron Man game and a Black Panther Captain America game. I'm like, bro, this is bonkers at this point. If we don't have a Green Lantern game, if we don't have all these other games, like Marvel's just hitting it out of the park, bro.
They are. And it's time for DC to lock in. And so Batman really is the key to all of it. Like Batman is going to save every single aspect of WB. It's going to save the movie division, and Batman is going to save the video games. That's just the way it is. It's like in sports. If you're, if you're like a baseball manager or whatever, like if it is the last out of the game, you want to put your best hitter up to the plate to save the game, right? And so that's Batman for WB. It's like the Hail Mary that always works. Batman always works, always. He's never failed them, except a couple times in the comics when the writing was really shit. But in mainstream video games, movies, animated movies, I mean, he just prints money. So I think that's
now
what they're going to go back to.
Dude, they got The Penguin out right now, which is probably one of the better shows. I mean, everybody's kind of talking about it right now, so it's really popular. At least you got freaking Arkham Shadow coming out. Absolute Batman, I think, sold 200,000 copies in its first issue. So
really,
Batman is definitely, I saw online and I saw people like, oh shit, I should have pre-ordered or something like that because it's selling a lot.
Those are crazy.
I just think it's crazy numbers. I don't know what's absolute Superman and Wonder Woman are doing, but obviously Batman's doing freaking nutty numbers in the comics right now too. So overall, Batman is obviously their poster child. It's their Spider-Man of DC, who just prints money. So obviously the gaming department needs more of him, and they need to stop fucking killing him in video games. Like it's funny because whenever they kill him in a video game, that video game turns out to be shit. So I don't know if they're gonna do that the next time, but they need to start refocusing and
what is
start
this
with
3
Batman
times in a row now? We had Arkham Knight, Gotham Knights, and Suicide Row.
Oh yeah, no. Also, Injustice 3. Injustice 2 at the end, if you get the bad ending.
Oh yeah,
Batman
4 times, 4 games in a row. Thanks.
Yep.
So that's exciting. Yep. Yeah, smart.
That's
smart move.
No, I think they could go ahead and kill him off again, and then what you do is you bring in an original character who plays his son, and then you give that character a shotgun, and you make it a looter shooter. I think we've just solved the.
Oh, now we're cooking. Listen,
this is the Arkham game we needed.
Promote this guy. Make him CEO of Warner Brothers. Like, escalate this man. Come on.
Hey, that's what we do. We should just pitch terrible ideas until we get enough power in the company, and then we can do it.
So we get paid like millions of dollars to tank the company. Yeah, that's pretty much that'd be great.
Yeah. We wouldn't tank the company though. We would actually have like good ideas and actually like start promoting people and giving.
Yeah, but the good ideas wouldn't get approved, Marcel. The good ideas aren't getting greenlit. What are you talking about?
If it was the 3 of us, I'm just saying, we could plot out some. We could. They're all old over there, right? We could make it all look like heart attacks. I'm not saying anything like that, now, but I'm just saying if we ever became executives over there, we could, get to the top somehow.
Well, there goes our monetization, and we may be,
Damn it! Not the FBI. Oh shit! Not again.
Oh my god. Okay,
Well,
we should end it there.
Yeah, do we have any final thoughts, or are we good?
We're good.
All right. Well, we have a lot more to talk about in future episodes. We have the Penguin show, like Marcel mentioned. We have reviews for Joker. We have just tons of news that Kobe and I have kind of been out of town, so we haven't been able to cover. But we'll be back soon with another episode where we'll dive into some other topics. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys.
Arkham Shadow next month.
That's
Arkham
right.
Game next month. So
as soon as we get a release date, we can.
And okay, one final thing is they're really teasing the identity of Rat King. So this is like the Arkham Knight all over again. But I'm honestly locked in for it. I'm excited. This might be better than the Arkham Knight reveal. I hope so. So
Bro, it's Joker. What are you talking about?
Of course, I'm getting very excited
Joker,
for
bro.
Arkham Shadow. I think it's gonna be great. So I can't wait to play it. And fingers crossed we get a release date soon.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye, guys.